The coat that changed everything. The metal detector's piercing alarm shattered the quiet morning routine at Providence Municipal Court. Security guards tensed, hands instinctively moving toward their weapons as the man in the oversized military jacket froze mid-step. What happened next would reduce a 67-year-old judge to tears and transform how an entire city cares for those who once wore the uniform. Providence, Rhode Island, November 14, 2019. The clock on the wall of Courtroom 3B read 9:47. Judge Frank Caprio sat behind his bench, fluorescent lights humming overhead, scanning his morning docket through reading glasses perched on his nose. 43 cases, parking violations mostly, a handful of traffic incidents, nothing remarkable, nothing that suggested his life was about to intersect with a story that would echo across the nation. The heavy oak doors swung open. Michael Patterson entered, and even from across the courtroom, you could see this man carried something heavier than the manila envelope clutched against his chest. His coat hung 3 sizes too large, army surplus olive green with corporal stripes barely visible on sleeves worn thin by time and weather. Gray beard patchy and uneven, hands trembling slightly. At 52, he looked 70, but his eyes held something ageless and haunting. That 1,000-yard stare combat veterans were like a second skin they can never shed. The bailiff's voice cut through the quiet. Docket number 19 CV 8847, City of Providence versus Michael James Patterson, failure to appear, unpaid parking violations totaling $873. $873. For a man whose home was a 1994 Honda Accord, it might as well have been $8 million. Michael approached the bench, each footstep of his 20-year-old standard-issue boots squeaking against polished marble, echoing in the half-empty courtroom. 15 people scattered across wooden benches, a young mother wrestling a crying baby, a businessman absorbed in his phone, a court reporter, fingers poised over her stenotype machine, ready to record another routine case. None of them watching yet. That was about to change. Judge Caprio glanced up from his papers and paused. Something about this defendant registered differently. Maybe the way Michael stood at attention despite visible exhaustion. Maybe the military bearing that years of hardship couldn't completely erase. Or maybe it was something deeper, something a judge who'd presided over thousands of cases had learned to sense. "Mr. Patterson," Judge Caprio said, his thick Providence accent carrying old-school New England charm. "Says here you've got 8 outstanding parking tickets spanning the last 14 months. That's quite a collection. You trying to set a record?" Soft chuckles rippled through the gallery. Judge Caprio's humor was legendary. His viral videos had made him a folk hero, the judge who treated defendants like human beings who listened, who cared. But he also didn't tolerate excuses. Accountability mattered in his courtroom. Michael's voice emerged rough, like sandpaper dragged across concrete. "No excuse, Your Honor. I take full responsibility." "Well, that's a start," Judge Caprio said, studying the documents spread before him. "Let me see here. First ticket was September 2018. Parked in a 2-hour zone for 6 hours outside the VA hospital. October 2018, same thing. December, January, March. Mr. Patterson, you seem to spend a lot of time at the VA hospital. Are you receiving treatment there?" Michael hesitated, jaw clenching. "Yes, sir." "What kind of treatment, if you don't mind me asking?" "Physical therapy, Your Honor, and counseling for PTSD." The courtroom atmosphere shifted. The young mother stopped rocking her baby. The businessman looked up from his phone. The court reporter's fingers paused mid-stroke. Judge Caprio removed his glasses, leaned forward. "You're a veteran?" "Yes, sir. United States Army, 82nd Airborne Division. Served from 1987 to 2007. Did tour in Desert Storm, Bosnia, and 2 tour in Iraq." 20 years of service, Judge Caprio said, his voice softening noticeably. "That's no small thing, Mr. Patterson. Thank you for your service." "Thank you, sir." "So help me understand something. You're going to the VA for appointments, and while you're there receiving medical care, you're getting parking tickets. The parking lot fills up, Your Honor. By 7 a.m. there's nowhere to park. I've been leaving my car on the street trying to move it every 2 hours, but sometimes my appointments run long. Sometimes I'm in too much pain to walk back out. Sometimes I just forget. Judge Caprio set down his papers. Mr. Patterson, where do you live? The question suspended in the air for 3 seconds that stretched into 3 hours. In my car, Your Honor. You could have heard a pin drop. The businessman stared. The young mother's eyes widened. Even the bailiff, a 15-year veteran of this courtroom who'd witnessed everything imaginable, straightened up. You're homeless? Judge Caprio asked. Yes, sir, for about 8 months now. How does a man who served our country for 20 years end up living in his car? Michael's hands tightened around the manila envelope. Lost my job at the warehouse in February. Back injury from my service got worse. Couldn't do the heavy lifting anymore. Couldn't make rent. VA benefits help, but it takes time. I'm on a waiting list for housing assistance. Meanwhile, I sleep where I can park without getting towed. Judge Caprio stood up. He actually stood, something he rarely did during hearings. He walked around from behind the bench and descended to floor level where Michael stood. The entire courtroom watched, transfixed. Mr. Patterson, what's in the envelope you're holding? Michael looked down at it as though he'd forgotten its existence. My discharge papers, Your Honor. My medical records, my VA appointment confirmations. I brought them to show I wasn't just making excuses. I know I broke the law. I know I have to face consequences. I just wanted you to understand I wasn't being disrespectful. I wasn't parking there because I didn't care. I was parking there because I was trying to get help so I could get back on my feet. Judge Caprio took the envelope and opened it. Document after document emerged. DD-214 discharge papers showing an honorable discharge. Purple Heart certificate. Bronze Star citation. Medical records showing shrapnel still lodged near Michael's spine. Psychiatric evaluations documenting severe PTSD and recurring nightmares. Letters from the VA confirming appointments for treatment 3 times a week. And something else. Tucked in the back of the envelope was a photograph. Judge Caprio pulled it out. A younger Michael Patterson in desert fatigues, arm around another soldier. Both men grinning despite the dust and heat visible in the background. Written on the back in faded ink, me and Danny, Fallujah 2004, brothers forever. Who's Danny? Judge Caprio asked gently. Michael's voice cracked. Daniel Martinez, my best friend. We went through basic together, deployed together. He saved my life in Fallujah when our convoy got hit, threw himself over me when the IED went off. Where is Danny now? He didn't make it, Your Honor. He died protecting me and 3 other guys. Got the Medal of Honor posthumously. His name's on the memorial wall in D.C. Several people in the gallery were crying now. The young mother wiped her eyes. Even the bailiff cleared his throat and looked away. Judge Caprio held up the photograph. You carry this with you everywhere. Every day, sir. It reminds me why I'm still fighting. Danny died so I could live. I owe it to him not to give up. As Michael reached to take the photograph back, his oversized coat shifted. Something inside made a sound, a soft whimpering sound. Judge Caprio froze. The bailiff moved forward instinctively. Mr. Patterson, Judge Caprio said carefully, what's under your coat? Michael's face went pale. His eyes darted to the bailiff, then back to the judge. Your Honor, I can explain. I'm going to need you to open that coat slowly, the bailiff said, his hand moving to his belt. Please, Michael said, voice desperate. Please don't hurt her, she's all I have. Michael's shaking hands moved to his coat zipper. He pulled it down slowly, and there, nestled against his chest in a makeshift sling made from an old t-shirt, was a tiny golden retriever puppy, maybe 8 weeks old. She looked up at the courtroom with big brown eyes and let out a small yip. The entire room gasped. Mr. Patterson, Judge Caprio said, his stern judge voice softening despite himself. You brought a dog into my courtroom. I'm sorry, Your Honor. I couldn't leave her in the car. It's too cold out. She'll die if I leave her alone. I found her 3 nights ago in a dumpster behind the grocery store. Someone threw her away like garbage. She was starving and freezing. I've been feeding her what I can afford, keeping her warm. I know it's against the rules. I know I'm probably in more trouble now, but I couldn't let her die. I already let too many people down. I couldn't let her down too. Judge Caprio stood there, looking at this homeless veteran who had nothing, who was living in his car, who was facing nearly $1,000 in fines he couldn't possibly pay, who was holding onto a puppy like she was the most precious thing in the world. The judge did something unexpected. He smiled. "What's her name?" he asked. "Hope," Michael whispered. "I named her Hope." Judge Caprio reached out and gently scratched the puppy behind the ears. Hope licked his finger and wagged her tail. The courtroom collectively held its breath, waiting to see what would happen next. "Bailiff," Judge Caprio said. "Yes, Your Honor." "Get me the file on municipal code regarding animals in public buildings." "Right away, sir." While the bailiff retrieved the information, Judge Caprio returned to his bench. He gestured for Michael to sit in the witness chair. Michael sat carefully, cradling Hope against his chest. The puppy had fallen asleep, her tiny body rising and falling with each breath. "Mr. Patterson," Judge Caprio began, "I want you to tell me about your service. Not the battles, not the medals. I want to know who you were before you became another statistic. Who was Michael Patterson before all this happened?" Michael looked surprised by the question. "I was a kid from Cranston, Your Honor. Grew up in a small house on Elmwood Avenue. My dad worked at the shipyard. My mom was a teacher. I had 2 younger sisters. Played baseball in high school. Wasn't the best student, but I tried hard. Joined the Army because I wanted to serve, wanted to make a difference, wanted to make my parents proud." "Did you make them proud?" "I hope so, sir. They died while I was overseas. Car accident. Both of them gone in an instant. My sisters blamed me for not being there. We don't talk anymore." "So you lost your parents, your connection to your sisters, your health, and eventually your home. What didn't you lose?" Michael looked down at Hope. "My sense of duty, sir. My belief that good people still exist. My determination to keep going even when everything says I should quit." Judge Caprio nodded slowly. "The law is very clear about unpaid parking violations, Mr. Patterson. The city has every right to collect this debt. $873 plus court costs brings your total to $1,047. Do you have any way to pay this amount?" "No, sir. I have $63 to my name. That has to last me until my disability check comes through next week." "And how much is your disability check?" $912 a month, Your Honor. $912 a month to live on, to eat, to buy gas, to somehow survive in a city where a studio apartment costs $1,200 a month minimum. Judge Caprio leaned back in his chair. He looked at his courtroom, at the people watching, at his bailiff, at the court reporter, at Michael Patterson holding a puppy named Hope. Then he looked at the documents spread across his bench. 20 years of service, Purple Heart, Bronze Star, medical records showing injuries that would cause most people to give up. "Here's what's going to happen," Judge Caprio said. "I'm going to dismiss all 8 parking violations." The courtroom erupted. People gasped. Someone started clapping. Michael's eyes went wide with disbelief. "Your Honor," Michael stammered, "I don't understand." "The parking situation at the VA hospital is abysmal," Judge Caprio continued. "I've heard the same story from a dozen veterans this year alone. Men and women who served our country can't park legally while receiving medical treatment they earned through their service. That's not justice. That's bureaucratic nonsense. I'm dismissing these tickets, and I'm writing a letter to the VA administrator demanding they fix their parking situation immediately." Michael was crying. Tears streamed down his weathered face into his gray beard. "Thank you, Your Honor, thank you so much." "I'm not finished," Judge Caprio said. He turned to his bailiff. "Tom, call Ellen over at Providence Housing Authority. Tell her I'm sending over a veteran who needs emergency housing placement today. Not next week, not next month. Today." "Yes, sir." "Call Dr. Sarah Chen at the VA. Tell her I want Mr. Patterson enrolled in their accelerated benefits program. And get me Peter Santos from Veterans Alliance. Tell him I'm calling in that favor he owes me." The bailiff was writing furiously, making call after call. Judge Caprio wasn't done. "Sophia," he said to his clerk, "contact the Humane Society. Ask them if they have resources for veterans with service animals. If that puppy means that much to Mr. Patterson, we're going to make sure she gets proper veterinary care, and he gets whatever support he needs to keep her." Michael couldn't speak. He just sat there holding hope, tears falling onto the puppy's golden fur. The small dog woke up and looked at her owner with those big brown eyes, sensing something important was happening. But Judge Caprio wasn't finished, not even close. "There's one more thing," the judge said. He reached into his desk drawer and pulled out his personal checkbook. The entire courtroom watched as he wrote out a check. He tore it from the book and held it up. "This is a personal check for $500, Judge Caprio said. "It's not from the court. It's from me, Frank Caprio, private citizen. I want you to use this money to get yourself some necessities. Food, warm clothes, whatever you and Hope need. Consider it a small thank you from a grateful citizen to a man who gave 20 years of his life defending this country." The young mother in the gallery was sobbing. The businessman had tears streaming down his face. Even the court reporter had stopped typing to wipe her eyes. Michael stood up slowly. He walked to the bench. Judge Caprio came back down to floor level and handed him the check. Then he did something that judges never do. He hugged him. Judge Frank Caprio, a Rhode Island institution, a man who'd presided over thousands of cases, wrapped his arms around this homeless veteran and held him while he cried. Hope was squished between them, her tail wagging, somehow understanding that something beautiful was happening. The courtroom erupted in applause. Everyone was standing, clapping, crying. The bailiff was wiping his eyes. The clerk was reaching for tissues. This was no longer a courtroom hearing. This was a moment of pure human compassion, the kind that reminds us why we fight so hard to maintain our humanity in a world that often seems determined to crush it. When they finally separated, Judge Caprio kept his hands on Michael's shoulders. "Listen to me very carefully," he said. "Your fight isn't over. Getting housing is just the first step. You've got medical issues to address, mental health to work on, a life to rebuild. But you're not doing it alone anymore. Do you understand? You're not alone." "I understand, Your Honor," Michael managed to say. "I won't let you down." "You already haven't let anyone down. You served with honor. You survived when others didn't. You saved a puppy when you could barely save yourself. Those aren't the actions of a failure. Those are the actions of a hero." As Michael returned to his seat, Judge Caprio addressed the entire courtroom. "Let this be a lesson to all of us. Before we judge someone's circumstances, we need to understand their story. Mr. Patterson isn't a deadbeat trying to avoid parking tickets. He's a decorated veteran fighting battles that most of us can't imagine. Our job as a community is to lift people up, not push them down. Our job is to show compassion, especially to those who showed courage when we needed them most." The applause continued, but Judge Caprio raised his hand for silence because there was something else, something he'd noticed in Michael's envelope that nobody else had seen yet. "Mr. Patterson, there's one more document in here I want to ask you about." Michael looked confused. "Sir?" Judge Caprio pulled out a piece of paper. It was a job application, filled out in careful handwriting, dated from 3 days ago, for a maintenance position at the local community center. Starting pay $12 an hour. Michael had never submitted it. "Why didn't you turn this in?" Judge Caprio asked. Michael's voice was barely a whisper. No phone number to put down, no address, no way for them to contact me. Figured they wouldn't hire a homeless guy anyway. Why bother? Judge Caprio looked at the application for a long moment. Then he pulled out his phone and dialed a number. The courtroom watched in silence as he waited for someone to answer. Marcus Frank Caprio. Yeah, I'm good. Listen, I've got a veteran here in my courtroom who applied for your maintenance position. 20 years military service, honorable discharge, Purple Heart recipient. He's exactly the kind of person you said you wanted to hire. Can you do me a favor and interview him this week? Excellent. I'll send him over tomorrow at 10 a.m. You won't regret this, Marcus. I guarantee it. He hung up and looked at Michael. Tomorrow morning, 10 a.m., you have a job interview at Providence Community Center. Marcus Reynolds is expecting you. He's a good man, former Marine. He understands what you've been through. Show up on time, tell him your story honestly, and I believe you'll walk out with a job offer. Michael couldn't form words. His mouth opened and closed, but nothing came out. Hope yipped softly as if adding her own thanks. The bailiff approached the bench and whispered something to Judge Caprio. The judge nodded and turned back to Michael. Tom just spoke with Ellen at Housing Authority. They have a studio apartment available in the Veterans Complex on Broad Street. It's yours if you want it. Rent is 30% of your income. Move-in is immediate. They're cutting through all the red tape. You can get the keys today. Today? This man who woke up that morning living in his car, facing $1,000 in fines he couldn't pay, expecting more heartbreak and disappointment, was going to sleep tonight in his own bed, in his own home with his puppy, with hope for tomorrow. I don't know what to say, Michael whispered. Say you'll take care of yourself, Judge Caprio replied. Say you'll keep fighting. Say you'll remember that there are people who care even when it doesn't feel like it. Can you do that? Yes, sir, I promise. But here's where the story takes a turn nobody expected, not even Judge Caprio. As Michael stood to leave, clutching his envelope and his puppy and his hope for the future, a man in the gallery stood up. He was about 40 years old, wearing a business suit. The same businessman who'd been checking his phone earlier. His face was red and tears were streaming down his cheeks. Excuse me, Your Honor, the man said, his voice shaking. May I approach? Judge Caprio looked surprised but nodded. State your name for the record. David Martinez, Your Honor. I'm here for a traffic violation hearing later this morning, but I need to say something. I need to say something to Mr. Patterson. Michael turned around, confused. He'd never seen this man before. David walked forward until he was standing just a few feet from Michael. You said your friend's name was Danny Martinez. Daniel Martinez, Medal of Honor recipient, killed in Fallujah in 2004. Yes, Michael said carefully. Did you know him? He was my brother. The courtroom went completely silent. Nobody moved, nobody breathed. Danny wrote letters home, David continued, his voice breaking. Every week he'd write to our mom. In every single letter, he talked about his best friend Michael, about how brave you were, how you always had everyone's back, how you made him laugh even in the worst situations. He said you were the brother he chose. When he died, those letters were all we had left of him. Michael's legs gave out. He sat down hard in the nearest chair. Hope whimpered in his arms, sensing his distress. After Danny died, we tried to find you, David said. We wanted to meet the man our brother loved like family. But by the time we tracked down your unit, you'd already separated from the army and we lost your trail. For 15 years, I've wondered what happened to Michael Patterson, the man my brother died protecting. And I walk into a random courtroom for a stupid speeding ticket, and here you are. David reached into his jacket and pulled out an envelope. It was yellowed with age, worn at the edges from being handled countless times. This is the last letter Danny wrote home. He mailed it 2 days before he died. I've read it 1,000 times, but I never showed it to anyone because it felt too personal. but I think you need to read it now." He handed the letter to Michael. With shaking hands, Michael pulled out the paper and began to read. Judge Caprio watched silently. The entire courtroom waited. Michael's lips moved as he read silently. Tears fell onto the page. His shoulders shook. Finally, he looked up at David with an expression of such raw emotion that several people in the gallery had to look away. "What did it say?" Judge Caprio asked gently. Michael's voice was barely audible. He said if anything happened to him, he wanted his family to find me. He said I saved his life more times than he could count. He said the best decision he ever made was becoming my friend. And he said, Michael had to stop and collect himself. He said if he didn't make it home, he wanted me to live enough life for both of us, to be happy, to never give up, to find someone to love, to make him proud. "Have you done that?" David asked. "No," Michael admitted. "I've been surviving, but I haven't been living. I lost myself after Danny died, lost everything. I didn't know how to keep going without him. I felt guilty that I lived and he didn't." David stepped closer. "Danny didn't die so you could feel guilty. He died so you could live. And seeing you here today, seeing you save that puppy when you have nothing, seeing you fight to get help, seeing you refuse to give up despite everything you've lost, that would make Danny so proud. That's the Michael he wrote about. That's the man he called his brother." The two men stood there, connected by a ghost, by a hero who died 15 years ago on a dusty road in Iraq. Then David did something that made the entire courtroom gasp. He opened his wallet and pulled out a business card. "I own a construction company, Martinez and Sons. I named it after Danny, even though he never got to be part of it. We do commercial and residential work all over Rhode Island, and we make it a point to hire veterans whenever we can because that's what Danny would have wanted." He handed Michael the card. "The job at the community center is great, but when you're ready for something more, you call me. We'll find a position that works with your physical limitations. We have health insurance, dental, vision, retirement plan. And you'll be working alongside 3 other veterans who understand what you've been through." Michael stared at the card like it was made of gold. "I don't know what to say." "Say you'll think about it. Say you'll stay in touch. Say you'll let me get to know the man my brother loved like family. My mom is 83 years old. She talks about Danny every day. It would mean the world to her to meet you, to hear your stories about him, to know that part of him is still out there in the world." "I'd be honored," Michael managed to say. David turned to Judge Caprio. "Your Honor, whatever Mr. Patterson needs, Martinez and Sons will provide. If he needs tools for his apartment, we'll furnish it. If he needs work clothes, we'll buy them. If he needs transportation, we'll help him get a reliable vehicle. Consider it our way of honoring Danny's memory and taking care of the brother he left behind." Judge Caprio had tears in his eyes. This hardened judge who'd seen every kind of human behavior, who'd presided over thousands of cases, who thought he'd seen everything, was crying openly on the bench. "Mr. Martinez," Judge Caprio said, "what brings you to court today?" "Speeding ticket, Your Honor. Going 47 in a 35 zone near the elementary school on Hope Street." "Were you really speeding?" "Yes, sir, no excuse. I was late for a meeting and I made a bad choice." Judge Caprio looked at him for a long moment. Then he picked up David's file, marked something on it and set it aside. "Your fine is dismissed, but I'm going to ask you to do something for me instead." "Anything, Your Honor." "I want you to take Mr. Patterson to lunch today. I want you two to sit down and talk, really talk, share your stories about Danny. Start building the relationship that your brother would have wanted you to have. Can you do that?" "It would be my privilege, Your Honor." Judge Caprio stood up and addressed the entire courtroom. "Ladies and gentlemen, what we've witnessed here today is bigger than parking tickets or court procedures. We've witnessed the power of human connection, the importance of compassion, the truth that no one is truly alone if we're willing to reach out and help each other. Mr. Patterson came here expecting judgment and left with justice. Real justice. Not just legal justice, but human justice. The applause was thunderous. People were openly weeping. The young mother with the baby was clapping so hard the baby started crying. The bailiff was grinning from ear to ear. Even the court reporter abandoned her stenotype machine to join the standing ovation. Michael stood there in the center of it all, holding hope, surrounded by strangers who felt like family, connected to the brother of his fallen friend, supported by a judge who saw him as a human being rather than a case number. The morning had started with him alone in his car, cold and hungry and hopeless. Now he had a home, a job interview, new friends, and most importantly, he had hope. Real hope. Not just the puppy in his arms, but actual hope for his future. But this story doesn't end in the courtroom. 3 months later, January 27, 2020, Michael Patterson pulled his truck into the parking lot of Providence Community Center. His truck, not a borrowed vehicle, not a car he was living in. An actual truck that David Martinez had helped him buy after his first 2 months working construction. It was a 2015 Ford F-150, metallic blue, with working heat and a radio that played classic rock. He'd never been so proud of a vehicle in his life. Hope sat in the passenger seat, now 4 times bigger than she'd been in November, wearing a service dog vest that said "Emotional Support Animal" in bold letters. The Humane Society had helped Michael train her properly. She'd learned to sense his panic attacks before they happened. She'd wake him gently from nightmares. She'd keep him grounded when the PTSD threatened to overwhelm him. Hope wasn't just a pet. She was his lifeline. Michael climbed out of the truck and walked toward the community center entrance. He was wearing clean work clothes, his Martinez & Sons jacket, and boots that didn't have holes in them. His beard was trimmed. His hair was cut. He looked healthy, well-fed, alive in a way he hadn't been in years. Inside, Judge Caprio was waiting in the multi-purpose room. This wasn't a coincidental meeting. Michael had called and asked if the judge would attend something special. Judge Caprio had cleared his schedule immediately. The room was filled with people. David Martinez and his family, including his 83-year-old mother, Rosa, who clutched a photograph of Danny in uniform. Ellen from Providence Housing Authority, who'd cut through the red tape to get Michael his apartment. Dr. Sarah Chen from the VA, who'd personally overseen Michael's medical care. Peter Santos from Veterans Alliance. Marcus Reynolds from the community center, where Michael had worked for 6 weeks before moving to the construction job. And dozens of other people whose lives had been touched by Michael's story. But the guests of honor were sitting in the front row, 6 homeless veterans that Michael had personally helped over the past 3 months. He'd met them at the shelter, at the VA, on the streets, and using the network of support that had saved him, he'd helped save them too. Housing placements, job connections, medical care. One step at a time, paying forward the compassion he'd received. Michael walked to the front of the room and stood behind a small podium. Hope sat beside him, her tail thumping against the floor. He pulled out a piece of paper with notes, but then folded it back up. This needed to come from the heart. 3 months ago, I walked into a courtroom expecting the worst, Michael began. I was homeless, sick, broken. I'd given up on everything except surviving one more day. I had 8 parking tickets I couldn't pay and a puppy I'd found in a dumpster. I thought I was at the end of my rope. He paused and looked at Judge Caprio. Then I met a judge who saw me as a human being, who looked past my circumstances and saw my service, my struggle, my determination to keep fighting even when I had nothing left to fight with. He didn't just dismiss my tickets. He dismissed the notion that I was beyond help, that I was disposable, that I didn't matter. Judge Caprio wiped his eyes but smiled. And I met David Martinez, Michael continued, gesturing to the businessman in the second row. The brother of my best friend Danny, the man who died saving my life. For 15 years I thought I was alone, that Danny's family had moved on, that I was just another forgotten veteran. But Danny's brother found me in that courtroom by pure chance, or maybe not chance. Maybe Danny was still watching out for me, still bringing the right people into my life at the right time. Rosa Martinez was crying, clutching her son's photograph. David had his arm around her, tears streaming down his own face. "I called you all here today because I want to announce something," Michael said. "With the help of Judge Caprio, David Martinez, and Peter Santos, I'm starting a new organization. It's called Operation Hope. Our mission is to help homeless veterans navigate the system that failed them. We'll provide direct support, connect them with housing and jobs, and make sure no veteran has to fight alone the way I did." The room erupted in applause. Hope barked excitedly, feeding off the energy. "We've already secured our first grant from Veterans Alliance," Michael continued. "David's company is donating office space. Judge Caprio is serving as our board advisor and helping us connect with city resources. Dr. Chen and the VA are providing medical referrals. And these 6 veterans sitting in front of me are our first success stories. All housed, all employed, all fighting to rebuild their lives with dignity and support." He pulled out a photograph and held it up. It was the same picture of him and Danny in Fallujah that Judge Caprio had seen in November. "Danny Martinez believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. He died protecting me and 3 other soldiers because that's who he was. A hero, a brother, a man who saw the best in people and brought it out through his actions." Michael looked directly at Rosa Martinez. "Mrs. Martinez, your son saved my life multiple times in Iraq, but he saved my life again 3 months ago when his brother walked into that courtroom. Danny's legacy isn't just his Medal of Honor. It's every veteran we help, every life we save, every person we remind that they matter, that they're not alone, that their service meant something, and their struggle can end in hope rather than despair." Rosa stood up and walked to Michael. This tiny elderly woman who'd lost her son 15 years ago reached up and cupped Michael's weathered face in her hands. "Danny would be so proud of you, Mijo, so proud. You honor his memory every day by being the man he knew you could be." They embraced while the entire room cried. Hope pressed against Michael's leg, providing the support she'd been trained to give. After the formal presentation ended, people milled around eating sandwiches and sharing stories. Michael found himself standing with Judge Caprio near the window, looking out at the parking lot where his truck was parked. "You did good, kid," Judge Caprio said. He was 73 years old. Everyone was a kid to him. "I didn't do anything," Michael protested. "You did this. You and David and everyone else who gave me a chance." "No," Judge Caprio said firmly. "We provided opportunities. You did the hard work. You showed up to the job interview even though you were terrified. You took your medications and attended your counseling sessions even when it hurt. You reached out to other veterans even when you were still struggling yourself. That wasn't us. That was all you. I don't think I could have done it alone. Nobody does it alone. That's the point. We're all interconnected. Your service protected my freedom. My position allowed me to help you. David's resources provided opportunities. And now you're using your experience to help others. It's a chain of compassion, each person helping the next. That's how we build a better world."